treat this evening as we begin our meeting, or just prior to, the Monomoy Regional Dance Band.
Jazz band.
What's a word?
You're not
It's
dancing,
a jazz
too.
band. Will kind of get us in the mood.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Yes. I'm going to read what their director, I don't direct the jazz band. I can fake it, but when this gentleman came last year to Harwich High School and introduced himself, and we had actually met, I think, 10 years before that, but Wayne Noss has worked in the music industry for the last 50 years, both as a performer and an educator. His performance opportunities began in 1966 when he served 4 years as a U.S. Navy musician. He has toured and recorded with numerous world-renowned artists, including Buddy Rich, Maynard Ferguson, Lionel Hampton, and Arturo Sandoval. He has performed with Tony Bennett, Ella Fitzgerald, Frank Sinatra, and Mel Torme, just to name a few. From 2005 to 2009, he had the opportunity to perform the national anthem as a solo trumpet player for numerous Boston Red Sox and Bruins games. And as an educator, he was a faculty member at the Berklee College of Music for 35 years. He's the author of Beyond Functional Harmony and Advanced Harmonic Concepts. His latest recording, entitled Touch the Spirit, is a collection of spiritual and patriotic arrangements for trumpet, that is Wayne's instrument, and symphony orchestra, available worldwide through Music Minus One Publishing. He and his wife Mary retired 4 years ago and now live in Harwich. In addition to volunteering here at the high school, he volunteers at the Family Pantry of Cape Cod and the Harwich Conservation Trust. He came to Harwich High School last year, had dropped off his resume. We met, we sat and gabbed for like 2 hours, big shocker there to those of you who know me. And I just turned them all over to him, and he came back, and we had this wicked enthusiastic group of freshmen this year who, when I mentioned the words jazz band, they're all like, I'm in. If you're gonna do a jazz band, yes. So, bam, our jazz band.
Well, thank you. And Wayne, notwithstanding, we are not worthy after that intro. So we are all ears.
Okay, well, this is a very exciting opportunity for the group. They've been dying to play for someone. But before we go any further, I just want to say that without the support of Rose Richards, I would not be here and this group would not be here. So, Rose, where are you? Thank you. I think you all realize all these students here volunteer for this ensemble. We meet one night a week from 7 to 8 every Wednesday night, and that hour usually gets shrunk to 45 minutes. So it's really not a lot of time to have them be exposed to a style of music they're really not too used to. That, and given the number of school cancellations we've had, I didn't really think we would be ready to perform for you. But they were so excited about the opportunity that we said, well, let's do it, and whatever happens, happens. So with that, we hope you enjoy our performance. Thank you very much. very much for allowing us the opportunity to let you know that we have a jazz band.
Wayne and company, we thank you. And the thought strikes me and one of my colleagues that the next time we're in budget season, we'd like to have them come as sort of a gig and book them. It soothes the main issues. And much like jazz, you never know when it's finished, kind of like our meetings. Great job, kids. How many are seniors back there? So it's like Duke or the University of Kentucky, all freshmen.
How many ninth graders are there?
That's excellent.
Eighth grade? And 2 8th graders.
11.
Starting with right next to Wayne, why don't you just stand and introduce yourselves to all of us?
Hi, I'm Tara Berry.
What grade?
I'm in 9th grade.
An instrument?
Clarinet.
Hi, I'm Tommy Well. I'm in the 8th grade and I play the clarinet.
Hi, I'm Taylor Morris. I'm in the 8th grade and I play the clarinet.
I'm Maddie Leonard. I'm a freshman and I play the flute.
I'm Jacob Porteous. I'm a freshman. I play the trumpet. I'm Dylan Ruthier. I'm in 9th grade and I play the flute and the saxophone.
I'm Beth Avery. I'm in 9th grade and I play the flute.
I'm Tab. I'm in 7th grade and I play bass.
I'm Matt Weary. I'm in 9th grade and I play the bass.
I'm Cece Kane. I'm in 8th grade and I play the piano.
I'm Evan Eldridge. I'm a junior and I play drums.
I'm Ben Hayden. I'm in 9th grade and I play drums.
And this is my lovely wife, Mary, right here.
And I play nothing.
Mary, thank you for retiring in the house.
Our pleasure, our sincere pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll be in touch. No need to call us to order, so I'll get into approval of the minutes. May I have a motion to approve last meeting's minutes? So moved. Second. All those in favor? Aye. It's unanimous, thank you. Public comment. Very difficult act to follow. So if you can speak in a cappella.
I mean, this might be a little bit of a letdown. I gotta tell you, as a resident and taxpayer, I've been following along in the newspapers about your meetings, and I didn't know they were this much fun. You know,
They're not really.
the newspaper doesn't portray that. You know, this is a good time. It was excellent.
Terry, don't tell them they're not fun.
You can't get that one by me. I'm having a good time. So I'm John Blute. Some of you I know and know me, and some who don't. My name is John Blute. This is my wife Jody, and we have 3 kids here in the Monomoy school system. We're happy to report that actually my daughter Maura is here with us,
And I'm Joe McKenna. I have a daughter here at Monomoy as an 8th grader.
So we want to thank you for your time, allowing us to be here this evening, and to hear our request to allow Monomoy High School girls an opportunity to play ice hockey with the current Cape Cod Tech and Nauset Girls Co-op. Before arriving at this point tonight, we had a nice meeting with Paul DeManch, the athletic director, and we also met with Scott Carpenter, and we've actually been talking about this for about 4 years, trying to bring this point up. So after our meeting with Scott Carpenter, he advised us about the school committee, so we contacted Chairman Terry Russell, and he graciously invited us to be here tonight to talk a little bit about the, here at the public comment. Our goal, hopefully, is to have a little bit of a dialogue and ask for your permission to grant Monomoy to join the current co-op. We understand that the current budget does not allow room for the addition of a girls' ice hockey team. We are proposing an unfunded team for the girls to play in a tryout. Now, this same request was granted last year, and Monomoy was invited to be part of the tryout, accepted, and the application was sent in, and it was denied by the MIAA because there were too many players on the team. This year, that team has graduated 7 seniors. So the team is in need of Monomoy, and Monomoy has a group of girls who would like to be part of that. We feel we have just enough numbers this year with Monomoy's participation to fulfill a team. The driving force behind this request is the safety of our girls. Currently, the girls play on the Monomoy boys varsity team. It goes without saying, boys ice hockey is a rough sport. There are differences in the rules, namely, boys allow checking, girls teams do not allow checking. So hitting is part of the game. My daughter first played on the boys varsity team as an 8th grader, and it was a little unnerving, or a lot unnerving, when she stepped out there as an 8th grader and there were guys with full beards under their helmets, getting kicked out of the games. For, as some of us know, boys this age can be a little rough and like to prove it. So, each year our girls do unfortunately get injured. I've seen girls get injured. Maura missed this. She was the manager of the team this year. She couldn't play because she had surgery on her hip from an injury after her first year playing.
And Brooke.
Brooke, yeah.
Percussion taken off in a stretcher last year for a concussion.
So we come here tonight. You are the decision makers who can allow for a safer playing environment for these girls. You can allow an equal playing field for Monomoy students, as almost every other district on the Cape has done. The only, to our knowledge, the only district that does not allow girls ice hockey on Cape Cod is the Upper Cape Vocational Tech School. Hockey teams, there's no question, are among the more expensive sports to run. As parents, we've been paying over $1,000 a year tuition for each of our kids to play hockey. Hockey parents are used to that. If it wasn't for that, you don't play. As such, many high schools and those local around to us have allowed a girls program to start unfunded, even when they have a fully funded boys program. It sounds unusual to have a sport when you fund all the athletics, to have a sport that you charge for. But doing some research, hockey is one that many schools charge for, and especially a girls program when they're trying to start from grassroots and they don't currently have a program. Dennis Yarmouth had an existing boys program for years. They started a girls program by having it unfunded. Nauset, the same situation. They have it unfunded. So the big thing here that we see is opportunity. There's opportunity for Monomoy to retain students. There's opportunity for Monomoy to attract new students. There's opportunity for our female students to safely play a sport that they're passionate about for their school and feel like they're getting treated as equals to the boys. For 2 years, she's been with the boys. And she's overall had a good experience. The girls are tough. The mental part of getting dressed in a closet, not having a shower, making food to provide for them on an away game, but not being able to participate in it because it gets put in the boys' locker room and drive home on the bus hungry. That stuff they can deal with. The physical stuff, I'd like to avoid. When we met with Mr. Carpenter, he did say he's willing to add the program next year when they can budget for it. But we're asking to allow them to play this year and let us get it started. We have the opportunity where the Nauset Tech team is down in numbers. We would fulfill the team. We would pay for it. We understand the funding can't happen now. Maybe sometime in the future it could. Nauset has been operating for several years unfunded, as has DY. We're willing to work with the administration to form a boosters club for this and other sports, if that's what it takes. I think that, I want to speak for Mr. Carpenter, but there was some concern at our meeting about the legality of an unfunded girls program while funding the boys. But I believe that you sought some legal counsel and saw that that's kind of common in this sport. And so we'd like to get this started. And from a legal standpoint, our concern is the safety of the girls. If they're forced to play with the boys, it's a tough sport. And there are girls' programs. This is a safe way for them to play under the Monomoy name. The application is ready to be sent in. The legwork is done, and the application will be sent in soon. We're asking for your permission to allow Monomoy to be added. The way we see it, where the numbers are low this year, we have a small window of opportunity here, and we ask that the shade not be pulled down on that. So we are with that, I ask if you consider this to happen.
Fellow members, any questions for the parents? Nancy?
What are the winter sport options for girls right now? Basketball, cheerleading,
I think there's winter cheerleading, basketball,
and that's it?
and then, participating, I believe in the boys team. I think that's our
The other thing we wanted to bring up was that if the girls play on the boys' team, the school will have to pay for them to play on the boys' team, because if they're part of a sport and the school funds it, then, but if they play this way, the parents will fund it. So it would be a savings to the district.
And the other thing I'd add to that is that we've run into situations and heard from some of the parents who are involved here that there are applications already out to school choice out of Monomoy because of this issue. We don't want to see that. We'd like to see our girls here, and obviously there's a budget impact to those girls leaving as well that's much more severe than even playing on the boys team. And so, our preference, although we would love to have a funded program ultimately, we know that the precedent is there to do an unfunded program, and we're perfectly willing to undertake that in order to get this done for our girls.
And there's 3 kids who grew up in this district. Joe and I went to Harwich. Jody went to Chatham. We hate to see that people looking to leave to go. We have a nice school here. We got everything here.
Especially the boys with beards.
And those are on both our team and the other teams. I mean, the ones that you're going against.
Well, and I just also wanted to say that I've been involved in 2 8th grade class trips to New York City. I helped when my son went. He's a junior now, so 3 years ago when he went, myself and Jody Kelly did the fundraising. We provided enough funding for 9 students to go to New York who couldn't afford to go to New York. So I have the ability to do the fundraising. I told Mr. Carpenter when we sat down and talked that I would be willing to head up a booster club, not only for the ice hockey, but for all the sports. I know you mentioned lacrosse needs helmets, so maybe we could get together and raise funds to help all of our teams. I know there's a shack needed for football. So maybe we could, piece something nice together for the whole district.
Sharon?
I really don't, I'm very for the girls playing. What I don't understand is why we don't have funds for them if they're on this team and we would if they're on the boys' team.
We don't have it allocated in the budget to have a girls' team at the moment. So the athletic budget has a boys hockey team, but there's not funding for a separate girls hockey team.
Because we didn't know it was going to happen.
Right.
Well, I would add that this has been a process that's been underway for several years, so it's not a new issue. It's been, coming up through the athletic director for several years in a row now.
And it was approved last year.
It was approved last year, exactly.
Yeah, which surprises me that we didn't budget for it last year when as a district, we agreed to go into the process last year, but it was denied by MIAA. I don't know why we didn't budget for it if we agreed to go into it last year.
Amanda?
How many girls are interested right now in doing?
We have about 5.
Yeah, for next year, the numbers are fairly small. I think, probably about 4. And then the year after that, and this is on the assumption that 8th graders would not be able to play because we're not the host school, and the host school doesn't allow 8th graders to play. The year after that, when that batch of, a little larger batch of 8th graders hits their freshman year, I think there are, if I remember right, about 6 more girls in the mix at that point. So it's a slightly growing number over time, but it's not a huge number, not enough to fund our own, or to field our own team.
It's a fast-growing sport.
Yeah.
And Scott, what are the drawbacks to, are there any?
Well, I think the drawback, and I think they're right. I reached out and touched base with the lawyer that you have challenges with Title IX, and that is, if we are looking at this as a grassroots effort, you can skirt the Title IX issue that you're funding a boys program but not funding a girls program. But the longer that goes on, the more you own it, and you now need to take that under your budgetary umbrella and fund. And the challenge with hockey, it's the most expensive sport to run. It's the ice time. It's something that we don't have, so we're paying rental to have that. A saving grace and a try-out is that you're sharing costs, similar to how we're currently with the boys team sharing some costs with Mashpee, but it's an expensive thing to build that sport into the budget.
So with the families funding it, there aren't a lot of drawbacks to the district if they're funding it. Is that right?
Well,
That's
you begin to accept that you are going to be funding it in the not too distant future, and it could be the second year that somebody decides that it's a Title IX issue and pushes it, and it's okay. Have you put it into your budget or not?
The one counter to that, if I may, the one counter to that is, like I said, there's a lot of precedent for this. Okay, it is a very common startup process for parents or boosters to fund a startup girls team. It's the fastest growing segment of the sport, and this is the norm, whether we like it or not. And like I said, we accept that. All right. Ideally, we do get to the point where it's funded, and I don't see why, as a district, we wouldn't want that. All right, but we don't have to start there.
And I think Nauset's been going for 4 or 5 years, and DY about the same.
And I don't see why.
Still MIA's letting them do it unfunded. So.
And if you're willing to fund the girls to play on the boys' team, I agree with Ms. Stout. I don't understand what the difference is. If you're paying for them to play with the boys, why can't you budget it in to have them play with the girls? And be so happy that your legal issue isn't a lawsuit because someone got an injury that was life-changing. That could potentially happen.
Brian?
What's the deadline? I assume the season starts next fall, right?
Right.
So why are you here today as opposed to like in the fall? I'm not criticizing you. I just want to get an idea what the schedule is. What's the application process and things of that nature?
Yeah, so I've been in touch with the coaches of the team there, and through the coaches to the other districts, and their intent is to put the application into MIAA, the governing body, sooner rather than later. There's a couple of reasons for that. One is without enough players to field a team, they're going to lose those players to other sports, to club programs primarily, and they will have even lesser chance of fielding a team in the fall. Okay, and then they're obviously in a situation where they need to do their own planning and budgeting from a district standpoint, so their intent is to roll that application in as soon as possible. In fact, we asked them to wait for this meeting to occur.
Is there a specific deadline for the application?
I don't believe, and actually...
The coach of the team is here.
Yeah.
My name is Robert Bello, and I coach the Nauset Cape Cod Tech girls ice hockey team. I've been involved with it for 3 years. I was previously the boys coach at Cape Cod Tech, and I was a coach here at Howard High School for about 6 years also. All great championship teams, by the way. We went to the state tournament every year. This girls' co-op program, it's rounded out to be something that's been enjoyable for both schools. The girls have come together and become one. They still have total support of their own high school programs. They respect their teams and mascots that they play for. But while they're together, they truly become one group of people and they play together. The program itself, the deadline that's due is generally about 6 months before the start of the season. In this situation where NOSIT is partially funds what they have to come up with to make the program work, that time is needed to perform fundraisers, which we've done and been successful each year. So the advantage of trying to get it approved at this point would be to include the Monomoy students in our fundraising efforts. So that's basically why we're here tonight.
Can I just clarify something, Scott? I think you said that NOSIT partially funds. I think you're referring to the NOSIT Booster Club, not the district, correct?
Not the district.
Right.
Not the
So
district.
I just want to make that clear. For
NOSIT
question,
girls
Joey.
they fund 80% of it. They also get a contribution by participating in some fundraising efforts from what's called the NOSIT Boosters Club, Sports Boosters Club. And they basically have a couple little fundraisers that they just participate in, and then they get a percentage returned back to them from that group.
Brian?
The reason I asked about the deadline is not that I don't support the idea. I don't know how we would have a boys hockey team without having a girls hockey team or any other sport. But my concern actually is more procedural. This is not an agenda item. I don't think that, I have some concern about us. If our vote is required, we would normally have it as an agenda item so members of the public would be notified that we're going to be discussing this and could provide some input on it. So I'm in support of us making this decision, but I don't want to make it tonight because I don't think it's procedurally appropriate, which is why I'm asking about the deadline. I don't want to put it off to the point where it interferes with your ability to apply, but, and I didn't do the math, where's the math kids? As to what 6 months back is, but I think we have some issues about having the public be aware of this.
Sure. And for the record, I did request to be on the agenda officially as
We
well.
did.
I want to make sure.
But didn't make it.
Right, understood. Understood.
Well, this is my comment. This is not the slow road to China, but one, my attitude is in for a penny, in for a pound. So I think it's a good thing. My concern, and it's been raised already, not that I had to consult with both my family members who are attorneys, but I'm pleased to hear that NOSIT or Falmouth or DY, because you don't even need to have a member of the team, as I understand it, say, gee, this is our second year and I'd like to raise a Title IX question. It could be a member of the public that would just do that. So to have the club grow for a year or two or three before we, and I think you mentioned, gee, I don't know why it wasn't on the budget last year. I would guess, because it's kind of metaphorically, this past 2 years as a school system, we've been going to a charity shop for clothes. And then one of the kids came and said, I want to have you take me to Brooks Brothers. Because we've been hard put with our budget, balancing it in both towns to cost. So we've been hard pressed to the point where we're estimating that staff needs to be cut. So the attitudinally and fiscally, we're not in the position to say what's a regular boys hockey team, and if there are 1 or 2 or 3 girls on the team, which I can appreciate that that's not the ideal. But they're absorbed in the budget. So, but to start a whole new program, I would imagine it's more than just 2 or 3 girls in the boys hockey team. It would be a chunk of money that we'd commit to, which I think in the future I would have no problem with. If optimistically we can move towards that. I just wouldn't want to be surprised next year by saying we'd have to have another meeting on the agenda, have our folks decide whether or not this is, and then vote on it and then launch it, and then you'd be in the fall. That we wouldn't be facing next year with someone stepping out and saying to us, it's time to talk Title IX, which my impression could happen.
Well, I think that next year, since our school allows 8th graders, we will have about 7 or 8 girls that will go out for the boys team, in addition to the about 20 boys that will go out for the boys team. And I would be apt to raise a Title IX question if any of the girls were to be cut from the boys' team. I would think that would be an equal Title IX concern.
Yeah,
If a girl
I was
were to
thinking
be-
more if we launched the club. I would like to think that optimistically, this committee and this budget would have a year or two to get ourselves on solid footing to be able to say, you folks need X thousands. Thank you very much for 2 or 3 years of financing this, and we can pick it up. But that might not be our call.
Whose call might that be?
It would be a student or a parent who would just step forward and say, the boys are financed, this club isn't.
Well, one of my questions to you in my email was when there was a discrepancy in numbers for lacrosse, why were the very few amount of girls for lacrosse not told to play with the boys' team? Why are we accommodating them and we're not accommodating our female ice hockey players? I realize that boys and girls lacrosse are also a different sport. But it seems that there is a willingness to accommodate, and now we're finding out there's not even enough boys for the lacrosse team, and it's turning into a club, and 7th graders are being invited up. So it's sending a
I can't answer
message.
that about lacrosse. My best guess, if it were moi, would be lacrosse costs X to support, and a boys hockey team costs X times.
Well, when we spoke
So
with Mr. Carpenter, he said his sticking point for funding would be funding the coach. And there's ample funds to fund the coach if we're not paying full funds for lacrosse boys and girls. There should be leftover.
And the MIAA with the Title IX, you know, they deal with the Title IX too, I would imagine. And it's not uncommon for these teams to get started like that, like Mr. Carpenter was advised by an attorney, that legally, you know, as a grassroots effort for them to get off, it could happen. So in that scenario that you presented, someone might come forward and ask, and then I guess it would have to be addressed at that time, and maybe it would get disbanded. I don't know what would happen. But in the meantime, maybe you have an opportunity here to get something started safer. And I would think legally, if you say no, and one of our girls has a broken neck, we'll get some real legal problems, because you had an opportunity to put them on the girls' team.
The other thing I'd raise here is that what you're really talking about is a shell game in terms of the budget. I mean, there's going to be payment for those girls in your scenario either way, whether they're on the boys' team or whether we ultimately have to, as a district, fund the girls to play on this co-op. I think that you're doing that, playing that shell game at the expense of our girls, and at the expense of their safety, and that's what I have an issue with, and that's what I'm very concerned about as a parent.
Sharon?
Do you have a dollar amount this would cost for next year? What is that
Per
dollar
player,
amount?
it's approximately $1,200 for the season.
$1,200
Per player.
player. And you're talking about how many players?
Our estimate right now is 4, all right?
So
And
that would be
it may be 3.
$5,000.
Right, right.
That includes the coaches and everything.
Inclusive
Buses,
of
ice time.
everything, buses, ice time, coaching, everything. And that's the cost of one student school choice out over this. It seems
We did
penny
lose
wise
one
and pound
student
foolish.
coming in who wanted to come to Monomoy, that I know her by name and know her parents.
Right.
But she's at Nauset.
Any other questions, folks? Nancy?
I don't know if it's possible to answer. What's the rough estimate of having the girls play on the boys hockey team cost-wise? Because the team's already there and fully funded, and so you're just paying for their position on the team versus paying our share of the co-op.
The same thing is true in this case. It's already an existing team that we're just joining, and it's just amortizing the same total
I
cost.
guess I'm asking, it would be, I would assume it would cost us a little bit more per player to play on a co-op team versus our other co-op team because of the triad versus the.
They don't get to play on the other team, so.
Well, and bear in mind, it's already
They
a
can't
co-op
play,
team.
why be on a team?
It's already a co-op team for the boys, and so the per player cost might be a little bit different because you have higher numbers on
Right.
that
That's
boys
kind of what I
team.
was thinking. I'm
but-
assuming it's gonna be a little bit more.
A little bit, but the
Is it-
difference is Not worth
again,
my daughter's safety,
yeah,
frankly.
we're
One,
willing,
you know.
and we're used to paying about a $1,200 hockey tuition.
Oh, I'm a gymnastics mom, so I get that.
And the other thing is that what happens now when you get to the high school level in girls ice hockey, because many of you may say, well, why don't they just go play on a club team and not worry about the high school team? But now, because all of the schools on Cape Cod, except for us and Upper Cape Tech, they offer a high school team. The club teams end at Thanksgiving. So for her and Molly and any of the other girls that play ice hockey, they won't have ice hockey in their season after Thanksgiving. And they're
They'll play
used
a
to
couple
playing
weeks.
through March
That's it.
or the end of February. So it will be a season that they will not have a sport. And there's no club opportunities.
And when,
Steve?
If we go through this process and approve it, and you make the application and that's approved, could next year you be denied because there are too many kids from the other two schools, so that it's
Is it
a
an
done deal?
annual
Or
appointment?
once you're part of the tryout,
It is, it's
you're
a-
part of the tryout?
It isn't, it's every year they have to reapply.
Every year, we have to reapply.
Right. So if there are too many, then it might not go through
but
next
they,
year.
but as I understand it, as I
go-
understand it, it could be that, Nauset could get up to 15 girls or 18 girls, enough to form their own team. That could potentially leave us with the tech. Something like that
The
could happen.
purpose, through MIAA, the purpose of a co-op is so that each school ends up having enough players to field its own varsity team. The purpose of a co-op is not to have any sub-varsity teams. So if it gets to the point where there's too many, then, and one of the schools holds too many players, they would have to potentially break off from the co-op to form their own varsity team. So that's the sole purpose of a co-op.
At this point, Nauset has the most players.
There are many two-team co-ops at this time throughout the state. There's approximately 6 3-team co-ops, and there's even a 4-team co-op. And those have existed for 5-6 years now. Some have been asked to split up because each school, over time, created a situation where they could support their own team, and they did. And that could happen 5 years down the road or so, maybe sooner, perhaps, if you decided to go that way. And obviously, each school can opt out of the co-op from year to year.
Well, my last question, guys. Give me a sampling of the opponents. Who have you been playing in the co-op? Who are some of the teams you play?
Sure. Dennis Yarmouth, Martha's Vineyard, Bourne, Mashpee, and Wareham is one team. That's one of the 3-team co-ops in the league. Plymouth South, Pembroke, Bishop Fenwick is a school that we play. We've developed a great relationship with that school. They come down for a weekend. Yeah, they're from the Peabody area. Yeah, we're in the Southeastern Mass Girls Hockey League. It's competitive. We're growing in it. We're becoming competitive ourselves as a program. And we love to have these girls who have been playing since they were this high. We'd love to have them continue to be able to play while they're in their high school career. We'd like to see them be able to have that opportunity at this time before they graduate.
Okay, well, thank you all, and hopefully we have a better understanding as to your request and how it operates than we did prior to you arriving. And you're right, this is a public comment session, and what we would need to do is collectively as a group is make our decision, then call you back as an agenda item and give you a decision. I think that's step 2. And seeing that we're looking at the fall, we've got some time to get you back in here without.
I don't know that.
We don't have the time, as I said.
No.
It's a very short window.
We don't. In May is the next meeting of District D. They're the group that decides on co-ops, and then there's not another one until the fall. That's not to say a co-op can't be granted in the fall. We'd like to take care of this before the fall comes to try and get that approved. Again, it would help in fundraising efforts.
Could we request to be on the April 29th agenda?
Sure.
Please?
Yeah, I would recommend that a policy subcommittee get together and mull this, because I think that it's not just a hockey thing, it could be a gymnastics thing next month, or, pick the
Couple
activity.
years.
And I think you have to mull, what's the policy that you have in terms of adding a sport activity that potentially starting, parent, that's parent funded or externally funded, that, and at what point does it fall under your umbrella versus an outside umbrella?
I assume lacrosse went through that?
And you have documentation on how that process
We
is
added
done?
lacrosse this year. Is that something that had to go through a policy?
That was part of the budget.
Yeah, but
Okay.
May I ask one last
Nancy?
question? In terms of the funding, it would be, you're saying it would be fundraising, parent funded, definitely for next year, because it's not in our budget for next year.
Right.
And then presumably for the next couple of years, would be the idea, is that what happens?
It's our
Yeah.
presumption.
That's our
And then
expectation.
eventually it would work into our budget, so,
If
I
that
mean,
could happen.
it's potential that it could be put into the FY17 budget for the 16-17 school year.
That'd
So
be great.
that's-
As far as we're concerned, if
that
it ever got in the
we're
budget, we'd
not-
be happy. We're
yeah,
expecting
I'm
to
just-
pay
I'm
for the
just-
program.
wanna
We're
make sure
not
I'm on the
asking
right-
that in light of teachers losing jobs. This is not, we would not want to see someone lose a position so our girls could play hockey. We are more than willing to fund this. And we have spoken to all the parents of the students that would play in this co-op, and they are all for funding it. If you need us to sign a waiver that we won't sue the district, we'll get that going.
We're sorry for taking up
Yes.
as much time as we did.
We
Don't be.
appreciate it.
We'd
Thank
just
you.
like to see, from our standpoint, we've been trying for this for years. It was approved last year. We thought it was a go.
Yeah.
And then we sat back and we watched lacrosse just all of a sudden appear, and it was
And
tough to
actually,
swallow when they were getting hurt.
that being
you know.
said, if it was approved last year, then you probably already went through the new sport process with your subcommittee. So you must have approved it already last year, so that might be helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, folks. And someone will contact you about our next meeting, and hopefully we can get an A or an A before the May deadline that you folks have.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
I know it was a long 5 minutes.
And I apologize that we have to leave, but our son is taking advantage of the dual enrollment course you offered, and he's at Mass America.
Okay.
Look at him. Thank you.
Next item is recognitions from our superintendent.
Just a quick one. I want to just acknowledge a program that Monomoy students take advantage of or can take advantage of, and that is something that's offered by the Provincetown Art Association and Museum, and Lynn Stanley, who is their curator of education, helps facilitate a art reach program that students at a number of Cape schools, and including Monomoy, can take advantage of. It's paid for by a grant that the Provincetown Art Association gets. There's professional artists that work with high school students and even middle school students through this. They actually offer transportation if parents can't get the student there. There's a bus that goes up the Cape and takes students there Wednesday afternoons and Saturday afternoons for the program. They have an exhibition that is starting in 2 days on April 10th, running through May 3rd. It's called Get Creative, Not Scared, and there are a few Monomoy students, Ava DeWitt, Russell, I think it's Blues, Nat Walker, Dante Corona, Sam McCormick, and Kat Van Buren that have artwork in this. And next Friday, the 17th, 6 to 8, they have a reception if you're interested in Provincetown for the art exposition, and it's at 460 Commercial Street.
It's amazing. I went to the opening last year. It's absolutely amazing. And Kat was actually teaching a class this year. It's yeah.
take a little trip up the road. But it's, one of the other really nice things is I got 3 letters from our parents, or parents of students that are taking advantage of this, and just, sort of touting, what the program's meant for their kids. So they have, they really have gone through a thoughtful process of having some very hip activities for students. So they have game design and computer animation and steampunk, and just a lot of new types of arts in addition to some more traditional ones.
Thank you, Scott. Our student representative, Laney. Among everything else you do you play hockey?
No, I don't. I'm missing out.
Proceed.
Okay. Hello. So I'm just gonna go over a few goings on at school lately. So firstly, today we had enrichment block, which we have every other Wednesday for 40 minutes at the end of the day. And the GSA, Gay Straight Alliance Club, put on an open mic. And we had several participants, so we all enjoyed that. It was a nice break. Also, the student survey that I had talked about last time that everybody in the school took is continuing to be analyzed in Culture Committee. A few of our students as well as teachers are working on that. Next Wednesday we have the Pops concert coming up. And I believe it's British.
A big British rock band.
Yeah, so that's pretty, 7 o'clock, right?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Spring sports started. The girls and boys tennis both won their first match. First baseball game is tomorrow, and the first girls golf match is tomorrow. The second edition of our school newspaper, the Shark Tales, came out this week. Also next Thursday, Latin 2 and 3 is taking a trip to Walden Pond in Concord, so we can see how the Transcendentalists lived, Henry David Thoreau. Also next week is prom, next Friday at the Waukwasset, so the junior class is getting very excited. And we have a prom spirit week to go along, of course. So Monday is Twin Day, then we have American Flag Day, Beach Day, Pajama Day, and our Table Wars Day. So we're getting competitive. Also, the seniors are taking their cruise to Boston Harbor on May 28th. And also, once again, Senior Arts Night in Harwichport in May as well, to showcase our talented seniors before they leave. And finally, yesterday, the junior class had a meeting as we begin to plan for after high school. So SAT talk, and we each meet individually with our guidance counselors to talk about what happens, dun dun dun, next year. And that's all I've got tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, lady. Good job.
Thanks.
Good job.
Terry?
Brian.
Following up on, it's not a really question directed at you, but
Okay.
I saw the poster coming down the hall about the concert next Wednesday, and I enjoyed watching Grease. Do we have any kind of specific policy about announcing these things? The Cape Cod Times has a section every day of things that are going on, and I don't ever see these things in the Cape Cod.
It's very hard to bust into the Cape Cod Times.
Really?
I've only been able to do it for Greece because I have a friend that I work with in the summer who connected me to the right person.
What about the
It was very
Chronicle?
theater
accept-
specific.
Does the Chronicle accept the listings like this? They have a section of things to do, as I recall. I know the Cape Cod Times does.
That should be something that I add on as a regular duty. I also do I have 3 students that we call them arts management, and they are doing PR. They're responsible for all of that, so that should be added to the docket. That would be a good idea. Thank you, Brian.
I didn't know about it until I was walking down the hall, and so I was thinking about the members of the public, especially since we're in a big PR push.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to reports and discussions. We have a middle school summer report from our advisor. I'm sorry, I was just, she whispered in my
I
ear.
didn't quite look like one of the students. Unfortunately, since, my name's Karen Silver, and I'm a student center advisor with Stephanie Ray at the middle school. And unfortunately, since spring sports have started, our kids that are available to come to a night meeting has dwindled. Thus, I am here. But the kids did get me some notes today, and they wanted to let you know that in the 5th grade, Mr. Quinn's class is leaving for their week in Torero next week. All excited about that. This week, half of the 5th grade went to Pleasant Bay. The other half, I guess, we'll have to reschedule because of the weather. But they went and they learned about biotic and abiotic things in addition to the weather. Some classes made poetry books. In the 6th grade, they've wrapped up their European studies and are now on to Africa. They're making crystals in science, where they do supersaturated solutions and make crystals. 7th grade read a narrative from Frederick Douglass, and it was really interesting because you could really see what it was like to be a slave. Starting the study of ancient Greece. In science, they are extracting DNA from strawberries and dissecting mushrooms. Today, 5th and 6th grade went to Harwich Junior Theater, which was, I believe, a grant from the Cultural Council, to see The Secret Garden, and well received. The play was great, but many folks preferred the book. All grades. Spring Fling, Dance for All Grades, hosted by the class of 2018, is this Friday. Everybody in the middle school has finished the first round of park testing. There were mixed reviews about which tests they preferred. Math was more difficult than the MCAS. They liked the technology tools available to them, but it was difficult to enter math on the computer. They did feel it was limiting because you could not draw pictures or explain your answers in the math. Our fundraiser for Pennies for Patients, which was for childhood leukemia, ended last Friday. We had set a goal for $1,200. The kids raised $1,058.39, and Student Senate decided that we would supply the other remaining $142 to make our goal of $1,200. And they just have a question about the languages for next year. We are all wondering what languages we will get to take next year. Students who took Mandarin this year really enjoyed it and hope it will continue. So that was the notes from the middle school.
Thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you.
Is there an answer to that question?
It'll be Latin and Spanish, both languages each year. And the challenge with Mandarin is we have one Mandarin teacher, and we can't split her between buildings when she'll have enough of a caseload here at the high school to have a full-time job.
I will relay that to them.
And I'll miss the sort of sing-songing happening outside in the office area.
Thank you again. We'll now move on to 3 topics under reports and discussion. The first being the Monomoy Regional High School student trip to Cuba in 2016.
She just went to take her daughter to the bathroom, but I'm happy to stand up and talk. Because
Okay.
I'd be one of the 2 leading the trip.
Okay.
And I wasn't in attendance at the last meeting. Did you all get the itinerary, the proposed
we did.
EF itinerary?
In the PowerPoint.
Okay, good, yeah, because I know the woman from EF came to the last one.
I make a motion that we approve the trip. We had a very detailed presentation last week. It's more a policy that we consider it one week and vote on it a different
Totally
week.
understand,
So
yeah. Yeah, Liz
I would
informed me
make
of
that
that.
motion in support of that trip.
I'll second it.
Discussion? Stephen?
I I think it's a fabulous trip and it's well laid out. My concern is that it's too soon, that we don't have full diplomatic workings with Cuba. We don't have an embassy or a consulate, and so if something were to happen, there's nowhere to turn with the kids on Cuba. I just feel that we need to give the communication a little bit more time to go stronger before we send our kids down there.
Brian?
Well, I think we were told that this is not even the first time that other towns on the Cape have done this trip, right?
Barnstable did a trip, I believe it was 2 years ago. I thought Liz had emailed, or one of the two Liz's, whether it was our Liz or the EF Liz, had emailed articles to,
Yeah.
I know to at least the superintendent's office, I assume it got.
We had those last meeting.
Okay.
Barnstable School District partnered with Cape Cod Community College, and they went with a company called Explorica. And I contacted them today, and they said that that was the first joint effort in Massachusetts, but now they have 15 trips planned for the coming year. And
Massachusetts has 15 planned trips?
yes, yeah, that's what they said. And I just went on Monday to the Yarmouth Cultural Center and went to a presentation by the professor that led that trip. And it was a panel of professors that went with her, but she spoke highly of the experience and that they all felt very safe and secure the entire time.
I was going to say that I've been twice in the last 3 years, and it was incredibly, I mean, I went alone last year in February, and I felt incredibly safe there. And I did actually, I know one person had expressed a concern about, like, what if somebody got sick? I actually did go and take advantage of Cuban medical assistance, and they were amazing. It's an
I'm
awesome
sorry.
country. No, go ahead, sorry. I'm very
I
enthusiastic to go back any which way I can, and to take kids.
I share Stephen's point, and I'm one to, I enjoy an exciting adventure and the prospect of travel. However, I really, in my 2 points, echo what Steve said. I just recently in the paper, there's still a lot of political issues being ironed out by the State Department and the Cuban government about minor things, the least of which is the fact that they are not ready to open a U.S. embassy. And that's really a kind of a symbolic thing in my mind to allow our kids to experience what will be a tremendous opportunity. But I feel that I just soon not have Monomoy be the pathfinder in this experience. I would like to see, my impression was Barnstable high school kids went with community college, and I haven't really seen too many high schools in the Commonwealth who've gone and come back and reported out. So I regret it, because I think all these trips we usually just pro forma say yes, yes, but in this case I'd like to see the relations with Cuba ironed to a point where they are fully recognized as not a terrorist state, which they are. Not that I'm saying they are, but that's how they're listed in the United States Department, in the State Department. So that's my feeling right now about the approving a trip for next year. From the audience, yes.
Thanks. My name is David Simonson. I have 2 daughters here at Monomoy, and one of them is very interested in going on the trip, so I certainly have the same concerns that you have. But these sort of trips have been going on for many, many years. For years, you've been allowed to travel to Cuba for cultural, educational, UNESCO-style trips, which is exactly what this is tailored for. Much of the embargo is against personal travel. I've lived in Miami for 15 years. Many people don't realize there are flights every day from Miami and Florida to Havana. So it's been going on for many, many years under these sort of pretenses. So it's not something new or something we're waiting on from the recent announcement. So.
Thank you. If I could chime in, I have have mixed feelings. This is definitely a trip I'd go on, and I was sharing with Rose before the meeting. I also have nearly 2 decades of being on the administrative end of something when things go bad when you send kids abroad. And and I have over the last 20 years had 3 children in particular that I can remember making some really bad decisions abroad and have gotten themselves in trouble abroad on school trips. And it's kind of a what's in place if something like that happens, if there's not an embassy. And yes, it's teenagers, even ones that end up at Harvard can sometimes make really bad decisions. And I've also mentioned to Rose, I had a situation where I had a student on a trip to Italy, didn't look when they stepped out in front of a vehicle, and then you have a major injury that you're dealing with. And it's how how easy is it to go and support and get students and families what they need in this situation. Would I go myself? Yeah, and is it? I do worry. While I'm personally very risk tolerant, I think professionally I'm in a very different place, and that's on this one where I personally struggle. Would love to go myself. Not sure what I would do if I was the superintendent getting a call on something happened, somebody made a bad decision, either stepping out in front of a vehicle or in this case, it's stepping out in front of a 1950s car, or just making a bad decision in a store, or taking something they shouldn't take to Cuba.
Nancy?
Knowing all of this, does EF have anything in place? And we should have asked this last week when Liz was here. But does EF have anything like, if X happens, this is what we'll do, or?
I'm sure they have policies. They have liability insurance and all sorts of plans in place for these kinds of things. They've been running these trips for many years in Canada and Cuba, so this is nothing new for them. So I'm sure they have everything in place. It's just a matter of the logistics of speaking to them exactly as to what their policies are, and it's probably written in handbooks and whatnot.
A question, what would be, other than the sheer excitement of planning for next fall or next February, whenever it was, what would be the critical harm in pausing for a year and allowing some of the issues we've brought up to work their way out diplomatically, and to allow some other public school Commonwealth, in our case Massachusetts, from experiencing it, and we learn from them as to the pros and cons, as opposed to next year has got to be the year we go. And also, I would imagine there may or may not be a connection with Spanish classes here. I don't know. Yes, so there is, and those kids would have a year plus. I know if they're juniors and seniors, they might miss it. But then again, that's just a thought. I just right now in the spring to approve it, in my personally regarding where we are developing a relationship with Cuba, which I think is a tremendous thing and maybe long overdue. I would like the federal government to finalize that with a consulate and embassy and various other things that go along with that.
I think that the main draw is that it is somewhat untouched, as far as they have very few ATMs, no McDonald's. That's the draw. That you come in and you see this community, this sense of community that's very resilient. How have they? Sorry about the policy of no food. Just the resiliency of these people, what they've been able to overcome in this style of government. And so this woman was talking about how they've fabricated these makeshift instruments, and the beauty of this experience of seeing something that would in a year probably be, and I don't want to use probably be very different, a little bit more westernized, and
A lot
the
more as soon as America
authenticity
goes in there,
of-
it's gonna turn into an amusement park.
Yeah, the authenticity of seeing these, the Cubans in a light of where they're just kind of transitioning from just the addition of Americans being able to be over there as tourists, or not as tourists, but coming over more readily now, it's just, in a year, it's gonna be completely different. The woman that, the professor at the university, or the Cape Cod Community College said, she went in 2003, and then last year, and she said it was very different. And so just there were no street vendors in 2003. It was allowed in 2014. Just a change in culture and what's important, and the communication that they've had with the youth and preserving the culture has changed so much. So in another year, the kids that would go in another year, it's just less and less authenticity of seeing a country that's untouched from kind of the westernized, the Americanized Walmarts and all that stuff.
Well, and I know in terms of the untouched part, when I had gone 3 years ago with 21 choral music educators, I had an opportunity to go, and the past principal okayed it. I went to him and I'm like, I'm a big girl, just say no. But my concert obligations are done, and then I'd be back in time for graduation. And he's, God, go. I'll help you and write it up. And I got to go, and I hung out with the 7 professional choirs of Cuba for the week, watching them concertize. And then I went back 2 years later, and I know, discussing this trip, going myself with people at school, and they started to, kind of get in my head a little bit. Do you think that's a bright idea? Do you think that's it? And I had dinner with a friend who said, are you excited about your trip to Cuba? And I said, I'm getting all nervous. And then she said, Rose, everybody in the whole world except for America goes and vacations there. And I was like, ooh, that's right. And I understand, because Scott and I had said, well, going as an adult versus leading a group of kids. And I know with the 5-6 trips I've taken our children on now to New York City, and Cape Cod kids, man, you get into New York City and they are glued. They are glued to your side. So we're kind of like trying to pry them off a little bit so that we can walk, 2 abreast instead of 3 on the sidewalk. But I think that, to echo what Liz said, in terms of getting to go to this country before it does turn into an amusement park. I know that was the president of the American Choral Directors Association when we were discussing that one evening. That the opportunity to go and see this country that forever and ever, and it fascinates me every single time I say to, point in case, the ring, oh, where'd you get that? Oh, I went to Havana. And it surprises me the amount of people who think that the Americans can't go because it's illegal. They don't realize it's on this side. It's not like I rode an inner tube into the country to go. I just find it fascinating now, the 2 times that I've gone, that people that I talk to don't realize that where it happened. And the teacher here said, what'd you do, walk in and flash your passport? Yes. I did. They didn't stop you? No. And the Minister of Culture talking to us, the choral music educator, said, please go back to America and tell them we're not bad people. I mean, it was an amazing experience.
Brian.
I think that, my opinion, I've been listening to both sides of this. My opinion is that, for one thing, I'm fairly confident in trusting the parents to make the decision about their kids going there. The issue of somebody stepping off the curb, that's more likely to happen in England where they drive on the wrong side of the road than Cuba. I think that, when you were talking about the, kids having problems in other countries, I think of it as from a legal standpoint, from a, kid gets arrested for possession of something that is more serious there. But the college kids have been going for quite a while, and if anybody's going to get busted, it's going to be college kids. So, I think we should support this. I think the parents are willing to accept responsibility for it. We would have the authority, if things were to get bad between now and next February, between the 2 countries, we could pull our consent to this trip if we had to.
And all the students would get their money back.
Yeah, there's a lot that can go on between now and then. There may be an embassy by the time February rolls around. If the, you know, the politics is obviously headed in the right direction. If something goes wrong, we change our mind and say they can't go. But I think
They have an awful lot of money down by then.
she said they get the money back. And we make that a condition of our approval, their understanding that if the politics go bad, we're gonna pull the plug, and then if they're concerned about that, they don't have to put the money down in the first place.
If I could counter that, Brian, I recognize the parents if they say, yes, I'd love to have my child go. That's their call, but also, once we vote as a member of the school committee, we're taking on the responsibility of those kids' safety and supervision. That's my concern, not so much the 12 parents. And college kids notwithstanding, adults in a music group, some of these kids are 15 years old and 16 years old. The quaintness of Cuba is a result of the 50-year geopolitical sanctions put on by the United States government. And that's why that's an impoverished country with a tremendous culture. That's why when you go, there are no McDonald's. And I don't know if Disney World is, America is that, we're gonna transfer that in a year, but my recommendation would be, independent of having to vote yes and then retract it if things get worse, I would wait to have things get better. Allow a U.S. embassy in several months to be opened up, to allow the federal government to establish the fact that you don't have to drive to Canada to fly with kids. So, however, again, it's a difficult call and vote because it is such an exciting moment, but that's my take on it right now as a school sending youngsters to a country that has been 50 years politically separated from the United States. Nancy?
I also listening to both sides and trying to decide what I said my daughter, not at age 10, but at age 15 or 16. But I also, she's definitely not, ever. I have an experience going on an EF tours with my husband from another school. And he was the organizer of it. And watching what he does with the students and puts the onus on the students and the parents. So yes, we have our legality of sending the students there, and the students sign a behavior and whatever they do contract, and if something goes wrong, they can be sent home. And I remember this conversation with my husband, with the parents and the students, in that, you know what, Adam, you pulled the wrong card, you gotta go home, you're on the next flight home. Sorry, you're just the first one that I saw.
Seemed like the
So I think, I would assume that's gonna be a very similar situation, and EF is a very reputable company, and I was blown away by what they did on my trip, what I went on with them. And I see that they would, you know, they have that responsibility, and as long as that's in there somewhere, and then the onus being on the parents and the students on their behavior and their responsibilities of how they're expected to behave. And if you do this, you're going home. You're not going home at the end of the trip, you're going home at 6 o'clock tonight, you know, type of thing. So I don't know,
Well, I appreciate your input, and I think we've thoroughly discussed it. We have a motion here, and someone seconded it, and we've discussed it. Let's have a vote. The motion was all those in favor of approving the trip for the Monomoy Regional High School students to Cuba? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? No? No. The ayes have it, I think. Was it, I can't add to eight. Was it
But only if I get
5-3?
Yes.
Viva la Cuba.
Right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming.
Absolutely.
Establish revolving accounts for chorus.
Should I hang out for this?
And replacement repair of technology equipment. Katie.
Why is it just Doris? Oh, okay. So, at last
school committee meeting, we voted to establish a drama revolving account, and at the time, we thought that we would have it blend together, the drama and chorus, but because the activities are so robust in both, it really would be best to have a separate chorus and drama revolving account. So I'm asking, under the same Mass General Law that I did not bring with me tonight, that we made the creation of those accounts last month. And then in addition, what is new this year with the Chromebooks, if a student damages a Chromebook, they have to pay to have them repaired, and we need to have a place that we could deposit those funds, so then when we send off and have the items repaired, we can draw off of that account. It should not be a part of a student activity account either. So that's the request.
Any questions, Katie? A motion then?
I move that we set up revolving accounts for chorus and replacement repair technology. Well, we can read that whole thing?
No.
Pursuant to Chapter 71, Section 47.
Second.
All those, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you.
Next item, monthly financial report.
Should have just stayed up there.
In your packets are your financials through March 31st, which is through the third quarter of the fiscal year. We're on the home stretch here. I wanted to point out, and I had to make a manual adjustment. Right now, we have an unencumbered, unexpended balance of $361,349.52, or just over 1.16% of the overall budget. When you look at the detail behind it, it would appear that the general fund is in the red. But when we encumber the salaries, we encumber, as you know, some of the staff get paid throughout the summer, and we encumber the last payroll, which is the August health insurance benefits, and the encumbrance got pulled into this fiscal year. That's an FY16 expense. So that's why I had to make the manual adjustment, because the encumbrance was too high. So the detail, I put a note on your summary pages. I don't know if anyone has any questions.
All set, Katie?
Okay.
Any subcommittee reports? Our superintendent's report.
I'll be fast, trying to be sensitive to time. We have an ad that's in the newspaper in the process of developing hiring committees to hire teachers in each building. Although the budget that we've moved forward as a reduced staff budget, the number of early retirements that we have has us hiring many teachers, guidance counselor at the middle school, nurses in three separate buildings. So there's a lot of hiring that's going on, and we're putting together hiring committees, including, I was talking to Ed before the meeting about the hiring of the athletic director, and so there's a conversation about making sure that we have coaches and parents and administrators and students part of that process. So that the process of putting together those committees is going on, really on the front end of April vacation, and we'll start screening resumes and start bringing in candidates right after the vacation.
Brian?
With all of the hiring that you're talking about, the net result won't be an increase in the number of teachers over this year, right? Just want to have that clear for the record, that after that long, detailed discussion about the number of...
So it's still a net reduction of 10 FTEs is what we have in the budget, but we have over 20
early retirements. So, so we have 20-some teaching positions to fill, and a number of support staff positions.
Cool.
Thank you, Scott. Our action items, I think we have, item 2, declaration of surplus equipment needs to be. Are we ready, Steve?
I move that we declare as surplus equipment from the music department, a Yamaha keyboard.
Any further discussion? Let's see if we can get the right note. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous, thank you. That concludes our evening meeting. We will be moving into an executive session to pursue to Mass Law 38, Section 21, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining units and non-union contracts.
So moved.
Good night, everybody. Oh, we need a vote to move.
Second?
A poll.
Yes, poll. Let us start with the poll to go into executive session.
Aye.
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 Yes.